Page 40, Standing in the Need of Prayer. I want to point out a few things here. I'm going to start with the right hand. You can see all the accidentals and flats. You can figure those out. You don't need me to point those out, I hope. But in the third line down, in the first measure, see those 4 G's? I think it's dangerous. You can do it that way, it's fine. But I would prefer a 3-1-3-1. So we're using different fingers on those notes if possible. In the fourth line down, second measure, you have the 4 C's. And you can do thumb on all 4 if you want, but I kind of like the 1-3-2-1. 1-3-2-1. On that, to me, it's easier. In the last line down, second measure, the 4 G's again, I would do a 3-1-3-1. Just like you did it up above there. Not a lot to point out in the right hand. The only thing might be make sure in the third line down in that first measure, after you play the 4 G's, that you hold that F sharp down. It's tied. The 8th note is tied to the quarter note. On the F sharp, you go to the B, hold the F sharp down. Don't play it again. And then in the last line, again, second measure, you have the F sharp as a half note here, so that's not a problem. You're going to hold it down. For the left hand, we have this pattern, and this happens a lot in music. You get this where the bottom note stays the same. It's called an obligato. It stays the same. The top note moves around a bit. I don't like using the thumb for all those notes. It's unnecessary. I recommend a 5-2 for the half notes, then a 5-1, and then a 2 on the E flat, and then a 1, and then a 2, and then the second line, second measure, use 5-2 on the GD. Third measure is 5-2 on the E flat. Third line down, last measure, I recommend a 5-1 on the CG, 5-2 for the C A flat, then 5-1, just use the 2 on the A flat. It's a little tricky on the fourth line down on the third measure in the left hand. You have here and then here, and they're connected, they're legato. The last one's staccato, but they're connected. You can't really, unless you got huge hands, you can't really do this very well. So here we're relying on the pedal to help us connect them, because you're going to have to let the notes up a little bit early on the half note to get this one. But the pedal will connect the sound for you. It's one of the times we use pedal to help us out. Then the last measure, it's 5-2 again on the GD. And then last line, first measure is 5-2 on the... And you can get the staccatos in the left hand, shouldn't be a problem, I hope. Pedaling wise, it's legato throughout, and that's fine if that's what you want. Third line and fourth line down, you have it coming up on the staccato. Make sure it comes up right when you play the staccato note, so we hear a staccato note. So you're here. This is the fourth line down, third measure. I want to adjust the pedaling a little bit so we can get the phrasing in. This is a minor thing, but I'm picky about pedaling, so I'm going to explain it. If you're not interested, no, you can skip this part. But I like to hear the phrases. So in the first line, you have the first few measures are phrased, and then the last measure starts a new phrase. I suggest lifting the pedal up with the hands at the end of the next to the last measure, so we get a little silence between the phrases. Then you can push the pedal down right after you play the notes in the last measure. So the last 2 measures would be this. So you get a little bit of silence there. In the second line, first measure, you're starting a new phrase. I recommend lifting the pedal up right before you play the 8th notes, and then put it down again right after you play the first 8th note. So the first measure, the second line is here. That way we get the silence in the right hand. You don't have to have the silence in the accompaniment. That's not what we're talking about. The accompaniment isn't phrased. This accompaniment, some could be, but this isn't. So we're going to leave the accompaniment legato, but we want to hear the silence in the right hand. It makes a difference. Now in the third line down, doesn't matter because you're lifting the pedal up between the phrases. In the fourth line down, it's the same thing. You're lifting the pedal up. And in the last line, it's okay because you're lifting. So it's only the first 2 lines that we have to deal with this. Now I want to show you a little more advanced technique on pedaling and ending a piece. And this is a good piece to do it on because it's the style of the piece. The last chord, the last measure, the dotted half note with the pedal, playing the notes and then the pedal, and you're reasonably soft. Well, at the end of the third beat, to just suddenly end the sound, to me is like a I've heard piano teachers play like that, and they'll get to the, it's just a beautiful piece, and they get to the end and then it suddenly just stops. I think, wait a minute. Well, if you have a good regulated piano, on an acoustic piano, I don't know how well it works on an electronic piano, you have to try it out. You're listening to the sound die away, and at the end you lift the pedal up ever so slowly, and the sound will just slowly die away. It doesn't just end. Well, you only have 3 counts to do this, and so it's better if it's a fermata on the last thing. That's too abrupt to me. I like the sound to die away. 2, 3, 2, 3. Now, in order to, you have to practice in this. In order to do this, you got to let the hands up a little early, so it's the pedal only carrying the sound. 2, 3. I would lift the hands up after 2 beats, and that last beat is the pedal coming up by itself. 1, 2, 3. And that way the sound doesn't die suddenly, it dies away gradually. Now, if this had a fermata, we could just hold it indefinitely, and we could wait for the sound to die away enough, and then we could gradually lift the pedals up, and the sound would die away that way. So depending on the mood of the piece, you don't always end the piece with just lifting the pedal up and you're done. As far as the style of this thing goes, there's 2 ways that you can do it, and try both ways, play the way you enjoy it. You can play even 8th notes, and this is very... Or you can rock the 8th notes and play this in a more blues style piece. It's up to you. For the purposes of us playing it together, I'm going to play even 8th notes because I think it's easier for you to hear the notes if they're even. And that's the only reason I'm doing it. And you can put in the dynamics and the crescendos and the decrescendos. They make all the difference in this piece, so be sure and do them once you learn the piece. It has a pickup beat, so I'm going to give us 3 counts and then we will come in. Right hand is here, left hand's here, foot's on the pedal. Here we go. 1, ready, and go, and... off. I don't know if there are recordings of this arrangement available or not, but I think I would play it more or less like this.